When Southwest Airlines, I guess by many measures and many opinions, not just mine, became sort of the number one airline in the world, I told our people that we were at a dangerous inflection point, that we had never been in such peril before, that if this was our peak, then we were headed downhill. There was no place else to go. That we got big by thinking and acting small, and that we would get small by thinking and acting big. And by that I mean not paying attention to our employees, not paying attention to our customers and understanding their needs, their wants, and their desires, and suddenly engaging in what you might call institutional worship, where all of a sudden the institution and its internal functioning become more important than the results that it produces by paying attention to the outside world. I also told them that only constant change produces security. And when I talk about change, there has been, I think, in the whole history of humankind, a constant tension between those who welcome change, who are about 0.1% of humankind, and those who are opposed to it, who are the other 99.9%. But change is absolutely essential, in my opinion. Not changes in principles, not changes in values, but changes in tactics as the facts and circumstances change. And I think that we have to be, all of us have to be very aware of that and responsive to it in business. And I look at the America's Cup. You know, America won it for, 100 years in a row and then lost it. Obviously, we needed to do something different in order to keep it. The Central Leather Company at the turn of the century was, I think, I wasn't there, by the way. It may look like it, but I was not alive at that time. It was a couple of years later I was born. But it was the 17th largest company in the United States of America. It made buggy whips and saddles, and it's gone, obviously, because it didn't anticipate what the automobile was going to bring to America. We said, we're just going to decide what we are as an airline. We're not going to talk about things, do we go into St. Louis 5 years from now? We're just going to define ourselves, and that will provide a strategic definition of Southwest Airlines, and we can depart from that, but it's kind of a guideline. You know, if you bump up against it, you realize you bumped up against it, and you can change. Circumstances change. And so basically we just said we're going to be a short-haul, high-frequency, low-fare, point-to-point carrier, using only one type of aircraft for safety as well as efficiency reasons. And they were going to define our market niche. You don't have a market niche unless you're willing to give up revenue. Everybody says, well, we have a market niche until somebody comes along and says, well, gee, there's a segment over here where you could develop additional revenue if you just go into it. And what you generally find is that you go into it, and yes, you get additional revenue, and your costs go up 28% as a consequence of that. So we basically said, this is what we are, this is what we're going to do, and we're not going to worry if there's a small percentage of the American people that don't like it and don't fly us. And that's the definition of a market niche. You have to write off part of the market or else you don't have one. One of the things is that you have to focus on your customers. You know, after liberalization was about to take place in Europe, we had a goodly number of European carriers come to Southwest Airlines and say, you know, you're the most efficient, competitive carrier that we know of, and we're now going to have to be competitive. And what do we do? And they were astounded because they expected some speech about, bringing in a whole bunch of tandem computers operating in parallel with one another, etc. And we said, well, we think we ought to go ask your customers what they want and get to know them. Because as a national carrier owned by your government, you've never had to do that. You've basically told your customers what they want, and since there was no competition, that was fine. They may have quite a different perspective on what they want and need from what you have been telling them that they want and need for many, many years. So go get to know your customer, get intimate with your customer, understand your customer, serve your customer's needs, instead of sitting around in sort of an ivory tower, deductively reasoning that we like this, therefore our customers might. And there's very rarely a conjunction between what people in the general office think is nifty and what the customers really want. Culture is everything at Southwest Airlines. Everything stems from that. And, you know, culture is hard to define. Diane von Furstenberg wrote me many years ago and said that she had flown on Southwest Airlines. And she said, I don't like your ambiance. And I wrote back and said, Miss von Furstenberg, I don't know what ambiance means. I'm just damn glad we have one. When the good times are there, everybody, most people seem to become very euphoric. And without any sense of historicity or any regard for futurity, they just assume that this is going to continue forever. Which, if you had any sense of history and any regard for the future, you'd know was not true, it was not going to happen, and that you had better be prepared and not profligate in good times so that you can survive and do well in bad times. What we've always told our people, you know, in our industry, something's going to happen, a recession, fuel price spike, a couple of things together, a war, you know, whatever it is, you better be prepared for the worst because it is coming. And I also told them that the biggest potential danger, in my estimation, that we had in the future was us. The old pogo statement. You know, I looked in the mirror for the enemy, and it was me. And what I meant was complacency, cockiness, arrogance, and they are the things that bring down companies ultimately because they're too much immersed in the moment and they think they're big stuff, and then they see a new competitor that's more efficient, more customer oriented, and guess what? They're no longer big stuff. I was sitting in my office one day and a young lady from the marketing department came in with some papers. And I said, Sue, what are you doing here? And she said, I'm here to let you think you made an executive decision. I was wandering around my office one day, and another young lady rushed up to me. It was about 12:15 Texas time. And she said, oh my God, we forgot to tell you whether you could go to lunch or not. And thirdly, just to show you what a fabulous leader I am, Melinda McCoy Russ, who used to work for Southwest Airlines, came into my office. She said, Herb, get your coat and put it on. So I did, obviously. You know, but then she got involved in an extraneous conversation with someone else. And I finally deferentially tapped her on the shoulder and said, Melinda, would you tell me whether I'm cold or am I going someplace? You know, I just like to be kept informed. Another thing that we felt very constrained by was rules. And, you know, it's impossible to sit in the general office and through deductive reasoning define exactly how each one of our 75 million passengers a year should be handled across the face of the United States. So we burned all our manuals. And we actually did that symbolically. Not the safety manuals, not the maintenance manuals or the flight operations manuals, but the customer service manuals. And there were, you know, 500 pages. Customer service agent customer would come up with a problem. Customer service agent, like they're going through the Encyclopedia Britannica, you know, looking for Roman numeral 6, small paragraph A, etc., to find out what the answer is. We said, to hell with that, just talk to the customer. And we have a few guidelines, and feel free to ignore them when you're dealing with customers. If you're leaning forward towards the customer, that's good, and we'll forgive you anything. If you're leaning backwards away from the customer, that's what makes us angry. And I know that a lot of people say, well, gee, couldn't you get yourself into some real problems with respect to economics? Well, if that happens with respect to what one of our good-hearted customer service agents does, guess what? We don't adopt a rule. We don't add to our management manual. Most manuals are really a substitute for managing, because people love to be able to say, oh, I'd like to do this for you, but see here on page 13, I can't. They're the abnegation of management, in my opinion. But we just bring the person in and talk to them individually and say, you did a great thing. You were coming from the right place. Your heart was properly oriented. We love what you did, but if everybody did it, we'd be broke in 6 months. But you understand, we do that individually on a person-by-person basis. I got a letter from a BWI probationary agent, customer service agent, and I just loved it because she said, Herb, I hope you mean what you say. Bad weather in Islip. Couldn't get the airplane from BWI, Baltimore, to Islip, and she went out and hired 5 buses to take the passengers there. And she said, I hope you mean what you say, because otherwise I'm out of a job. So we gave her a Winning Spirit Award as an exemplar and a role model for all of our other people. And a lot of it is just intentions, where you come at it from the heart. You may not be able to physically rectify the situation, but if you're leaning forward, if you're empathetic, if you're really sorry, and if you're caring, people will forgive you for things that otherwise you can't do anything about. It's sort of like Willie Nelson said, about his gravestone. I said, Willie, what do you want in your gravestone? He said, his intentions were good. Another thing that we insist on is that technology is a servant, not a master. This became an issue very early in the game when Braniff number 1, not 2 or 3, put in a special fare, and I said, well, this is what we're going to do to counter it. And they came back to me, the guys that were handling revenue management, and said, well, Herb, we can't do it because our computer program will not handle it. And I said, well, this is kind of a grave crisis at Southwest Airlines, because I've now got to make a decision whether the computer runs this airline or I do. So let me tell you what my decision is. You go down and tell that little computer that its ass just got fired. We have our flight attendants design our galleys. Who knows better how to do a galley? We have our pilots design our cockpits. We get a new telephone system. Guess who we asked to review it and approve it? Our receptionist. Guess who deals with it every day and knows whether it works or doesn't? It's a receptionist. I don't. I don't even know what day it is. I go around asking people, Jim, I used to say, what day is this? And they'd say the 21st. And I said, no, what is the name of this day? Oh, Wednesday. Thank you very much. And basically, we've done a lot of things. Automatic ticket vending machines. When the other airlines came in with them, it would have taken a combination of Sir Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein to operate one of their machines. And you scroll through 8 screens to get your ticket. And we said, no, we understand what our customers want, which is buttons. They're on the move. They're full of angst about making their flight. Press the button, and away you go. When it comes to people, it used to be, years ago, regarded as somewhat of a conundrum, I guess, in the business schools, because you would go to the business schools and somebody would say, who comes first? Your employees, your customers, or your shareholders. And I would tell them it's not a conundrum. You take care of your people first. If you do that well, they'll take care of the customers. The customers will come back, and the shareholders will appreciate that because the results will be fantastic. The customer is not always right. You talk about a stupid shibboleth with respect to American business. Every time that you say the customer is always right, you are demeaning your own employees. Suppose one of your customer service agents is attacked by a hophead in Dallas, in the station, who hits her over the head with a stanchion. Am I supposed to write him and say, the customer is always right? I don't think so. The customer is frequently wrong, and when they are, we tell them, we don't ever want to carry you again because you have diminished and insulted and demeaned one of our employees. We hire for attitude. You know why? Because we can't do anything about your attitude. If you have a lousy attitude, if I could change attitudes, I'd be on Park Avenue with a big black couch making about $20,000 an hour. So basically we say, if you have a good attitude, you're one of us. We prize attitude over experience, education, and expertise. And it's not that we diminish those things. If you have a good attitude plus those things, that's fine. But if you have a lousy attitude, that's where things start going bad. Our people department some years ago said, Herb, we've interviewed 134 people for a rampaging position in Amarillo, Texas, and we're getting kind of embarrassed because we've taken so long, and that's money. Time is money. And I said, if you have to interview 280 people to get the right rampage in Amarillo, Texas, do it. Because if you get the wrong person attitudinally, that's where the decay starts that spoils the whole barrel. We decided to allow people to be themselves in the workplace. Basically, we said, when you come to work, you don't need to be a different person. You don't need to be an automaton. You don't need to have a little mask on that says, oh, now I'm at work. Because work is serious, and you don't need to be constrained. You don't need to be inhibited. As a matter of fact, the more fun you have at work, the greater your creativity, the more ideas that you produce. And there's one thing that I have never said publicly before, but one of our rampages in Oklahoma City wrote me and said, Herb, I know what you're doing. You're making work fun and home work. I think you probably know why I've never publicized that before. Robert Frost said, isn't it a shame that people's minds work furiously until they get to work and then they stop? That's because we've set up such an artificial environment in our companies that they feel you have to be a distant person. You can't smile. You have to pretend to be serious, even while you're watching porn on the net. And we think that's a mistake. Not watching porn. You can't get it on the Southwest Airlines. I went on the net about a year ago to show that I was avant-garde and modern. And then I found out that all the sites in which I was interested were blocked by Southwest Airlines. So I've dropped off the net. We have a day in the field where you have to go actually go out each quarter and do somebody else's job. You have to sell tickets in the reservation center. You have to handle bags on the ramp. You have to do any of the myriad things that Southwest Airlines does. And you don't go and drink coffee with the manager of that department or division, because we require a report on exactly what you have done. Fascinating. The intangibles are more important than the tangibles. Getting close to your customers, knowing your customers, sticking with your customers in difficult times and expecting the reciprocal from them is really the key to a successful business in our estimation. And it's something that can't be bought. Nobody else can do it. Nobody else does do it. It can't be easily imitated. And I think our Spirit campaign was kind of a symbol of that. After deregulation in the United States, the advertising agency came and they said, hey, wait a second. Anybody can fly wherever they want to. They can charge whatever they want to. This is a commodity business. What differentiates Southwest Airlines? And I said, our people, their dedication, their caring, they're willing to go the extra length for our customers is what makes us different. So we ran the Spirit campaign, Southwest Spirit. Television, radio, newspapers. No one ever wrote in and said it wasn't true. Isn't that a tremendous tribute to our people and to the fantastic job that they do?